Now we will see the binding energy of a nuclide and binding energy per nucleon of a nuclide. Binding energy. The introduction of this was binding energy Be is equal to delta mc square, where delta m is mass defect. We have many nuclides, it has mass numbers. So what is the physical significance of binding energy? It will be like this. The binding energy means the minimum amount of energy required to split the nucleus or to combine the two small nuclei into a big nucleus. This is the minimum amount of energy required. If any nuclide's binding energy per nucleon is greater or is more, its stability is more. If it is less than a particular value, which one? The binding energy is less than a particular value of a given nuclide with respect to its nucleons, it is less stable. Now we will see a curve which relates the binding energy per nucleon, and from that curve we are going to find out which nuclides are stable, which nuclides are less stable or least stable. Now we will see the graph which relates the mass number to binding energy per nucleon. See, binding energy per nucleon Be by A, where A is the mass number. Mass number is nothing but number of nucleons present inside the nucleus. So Be by A is equal to binding energy per nucleon. Binding energy formula Be is equal to delta mc square, means it is directly proportional to mass. In case of atoms, it is said to be atomic mass. So we are going to draw the graph between the mass number to the Be per nucleon number. So if you see the graph, up to certain values of the mass, the binding energy is constant, simply a straight line. For hydrogen 2, 1H3, Li6, He4, then a small variation came. See, hydrogen, these two are the hydrogen's isotope, then suddenly it rises to the helium-4 between 6 to 8. This is in MeV. So the helium's binding energy per nucleon is in between 6 to 8 MeV. We can say it as 7 MeV, approximately 7 MeV. There onwards, a sudden jerk to downside for the lithium, sudden up in the carbon 12, next down in the 14N, next up to the O16, next down to the O18, and it approaches, and it is maximum for ferrous. The numbers which are wrote above the chemical element symbols is their mass numbers. So here mass numbers are very important to find out the binding energy per nucleon. According to the given graph, if you observe, for ferrous Be by A ratio is maximum. For molybdenum, it is also in the same range. From iodine, we can see some small variation in the mass number and the graph. So when it crosses the 175 or 150, for tungsten it is 184, for antimony 197, and for uranium 238. From here onwards we can see the decrease, this region. Here is the maximum. This is all jerks. There is large variation for change in the mass number. That means up to the researcher said if A is less than 30 or A is greater than 170, the nuclides having mass number less than 30, the nuclides having mass number greater than 170 are least stable or less stable. So binding energy per nucleon is maximum or constant for the nuclides which are in between 30 mass number to the 170 mass number, means mass number 30 to mass number 170. So what is which element has the maximum amount of the binding energy per nucleon according to the graph? Ferrous. Its binding energy per nucleon is approximately 8.75 MeV, which is the largest or strongest among all the nuclides. So the researcher says the same reasons, it is proved also. Whenever the atomic number crosses to 240, mostly under the category of radioactive elements, this binding energy is not possible to increase to the greater extent. It will become to the leaster, and we can see the large variation in the graph shape also. Now we will see how this binding energy for nucleon holds the nucleus, and what is the way to give the stability to the nucleus we will observe now. Now we will see how the binding energy per nucleon varies with the different materials. According to the graph, we saw that Be is maximum, that to be in the range of 8.75 MeV for ferrous. But binding energy, same binding energy is minimum. What is the range? 7.6 MeV for uranium. What we can understand here, the ferrous atomic number is 26, its mass number is 56. Uranium atomic number is 92, mass number is 238. If mass number increasing, binding energy per nucleon is decreasing. So Be by A should maximum, A should be minimum. If Be by A should be minimum or less than the 8 MeV or less than 7.5 MeV or least than that, A should be maximum. So what are the conclusions we can think from this explanation is, if number of nucleons increases, the space inside the nucleus won't be sufficient, its volume goes on increasing and mass is also going to increase. Whenever the mass reaches to one particular state, maybe near to the 240 or above the 170, it causes to the instability because those nucleons won't fit in the given volume of the nucleus. That's why this big nuclei, which contains more number of A values, used to split to two small nuclei. This phenomenon is called nuclear fission. What is nuclear fission? The splitting of a big nucleus which is unstable into two small nuclei. Splitting of a big nucleus into two or more small nuclei. This phenomenon is called nuclear fission. In case of fission, when nuclide is splitting, there is a possibility for the release of energy also. So as I told in the beginning of the binding energy, the amount of energy which is released in case of fission, or the amount of energy which is used to combine the two small nuclei to big nucleus in fusion, that is said to be fusion. In both cases, the energy which is required to split or to combine is called binding energy. The binding energy is proportional or dependent on mass number. So as the graph, these are the results. And one more point is there for the binding energy. If two small nuclei which are splitted initially, if they fuse it together, the binding energy of the fused one is greater than the small ones. That is very, very important one, which is one of the unique property for the nuclei and binding energy for nucleon. The force inside the nucleus is almost attractive, and this attraction force used to overcome the repulsive forces and electrostatic forces. So these are all the different properties and physical significances of binding energy and binding energy per nucleon. Next we are going to discuss about the nuclear force and the related graph. The nuclear force and its characteristics are like this. What is nuclear force? The force which is binding the nucleus with and overcoming the influence of the surroundings and the internal. So it will be look like this. If you see the any atomic structure, proton and neutron placed inside the nucleus, electrons are revolving around the nucleus. There is an electrostatic force of attraction between the proton and electron. Still, the electron is not rapidly revolving in a spiral path. It is not falling into the nucleus. What is the reason? There is another force which is overcoming the force of attraction between these two differently charged particles or oppositely charged particles. This force is called nuclear force. There are four fundamental forces are existed in the universe. First one, gravitational force. Second one, electrostatic force. Third one, nuclear force. Fourth one, weak force. These are fundamental forces in the nature. If you see the comparison of the forces, electrostatic force is 10 power 39 times greater than the order of gravitational force. Means electrostatic force is the strongest when compared to the gravitational force. But nuclear force is strongest among all the forces that are existed in the nature as fundamentals. That's why this force can overcome the gravitational forces, can overcome the electrostatic forces, and can overcome the force of repulsions in the orbit of the electrons or force of repulsions in the inside the nucleus with respect to the protons. So it can overcome any force which are stated above that. That's why nucleus is stable because of the binding of nuclear forces. And there are some physical significances and rules are there for the nuclear forces. Of course, nuclear forces are overcoming the gravitational forces and electrostatic force, but the rules for the nuclear forces are same like gravitational and electrostatic. Any gravitational force or any electrostatic force is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the particles. Here it is G is proportional to 1 by r square. Here it is E is proportional to 1 by r square, or if E is proportional to 1 by r square. So what we can understand, force decreases as the distance increases. Such like that, nuclear forces are also the strength of the nuclear force becomes rapidly to zero when the charged particles are separated by a finite distance. Because of that, we can say that nuclear force is a short range force which is strongest among all forces. These are the first two rules to understand the nuclear force. So what are the first one? It is strongest among all. All the fundamental forces. Second one, it is short range forces. Whenever the force will become zero if r tends to infinity. So 1 by infinity is 0. That's why if the charged particles are charged, ions or charged masses are separated by a finite distance are greater than their limit of the resolution, then the nuclear forces or any amount of force is going to be vanished. That's why these are the first two rules of the nuclear force. Two more are there and they will be stated like this. The nuclear forces between proton-proton or proton-neutron or neutron to electron or proton to electron, whatever it may be. Nuclear forces will exist. Proton to proton, repulsion. Proton neutron, no. Neutron to electron also no force. Proton to electron, attraction. So whatever it may be. These are the different types of the nuclear forces that can exist between the differently charged particles. In this case, what we can understand is The magnitude of the force is same between any type of charged particles. So what we can understand from this explanation, nuclear forces are charge independent. Charge independent. But spin dependent. What is the meaning of spin dependent? If you go to the spin quantum number, there are two types of spins, up, down. Up represents the clockwise spinning of the electron around the nucleus. Down indicates the anti-clockwise rotation of the electron around the nucleus. We know that for the up spin plus half, down spin minus half. See, with respect to the direction of the orientation, the value of spin is going to change. So, but the value of the force or magnitude of the force is not changing whenever the particles are the nucleids which are participating in the force reactions. So, what are the four? It is strongest, it is short range, it is charge independent, but spin dependent. Here is the graph which is in between the radius to the potential energy. The radius or the size of the nucleus is in Fermi and potential energy is in MeV. So if you see the graph, as the potential energy in MeV is decreasing, it is also decreasing. So less than 1, it is under the saturation region. Whenever the distance is going to increase, this is like 1 to 2, it is increasing, and after that it comes to the saturation state. So what we can understand, if the distance is less than 0.8 FM up to this range, the potential energy is minimum. That means it is more attractive. Whenever it is crossing over the 0.8, see the graph, it is repelling to the larger distances. So it is more repulsive. So these are the things we can understand from the graph. So here to here is a saturation region. There is a large variation like exponential growth. After that, saturation, which is in the distance. Next, we will see the radioactivity of the nuclides. Radioactivity. It is one of the interesting phenomenon that was accidentally observed by a great scientist, Henry Becquerel. So, Henry Becquerel's accidental observation, he exposed the visible light onto some materials and he observed their fluorescence properties and photosensitive properties. First, he observed with different materials and just simply kept those samples outside. Then, he observed the same procedure and he did the same procedure with the radioactive elements like uranium, potassium, thorium, radium, like that. Whenever he did the experiments on the radioactive elements, he packed those things and kept aside separately. He observed a photographic film is developed within the packet or inside the packet. Then he concluded that these materials continuously emitting the energy in form of radiation and as well as they are decaying continuously. This phenomenon is called radioactivity and proposed by Henry Becquerel. So, this radioactivity is three types. First one is alpha decay. Second one is beta decay. Third one is gamma decay. These are the types of the radioactive decays. But in radioactivity, we should find out decay constant half-life, mean life. These three things which are useful to describe the activity of a radioactive element. These are the different types of the radioactivity. Alpha decay means a radioactive element which emits the alpha ray, nothing but 2He4. When it emits the 2He4, its atomic number changes by 2, differ by 2, mass number differ by 4. Beta decay also two types, beta plus decay, beta minus decay, means transition of electrons or protons. Gamma decay, transition of energetic particles from higher energy to low level energies, nothing but the emission of photons. These are all under the category of radioactivity. Now we will see how the equations are possible to understand the radioactive phenomena of a material. Now take a nucleus of an atom. Initially it contains some n number of nucleides. Total number of nucleides is n. From these n nucleus, within this n nucleus, the integration, disintegrations are taken place. Nothing but the decaying is taken place. The number of decaying nucleus is delta n. Let us write like this. The number of decaying nucleus, or the amount of the number of nucleus which are decaying per unit time, is directly proportional to the number of nucleides present in the initial. So n is equal to initial number of nucleides, where delta t is equal to unit time. So what is the rule? Number of nucleides which are decaying per unit time is directly proportional to the initial number of nucleides present in that atom. So what we can write? Delta n by delta t is proportional to n. It is decaying, that's why we can write delta n by delta t is proportional to minus n. So if this is the case, now we can write like this. Now if I remove the proportionality constant, the equation will be like this. Lambda n. Suppose if delta t tends to 0, then this whole equation will become dn by dt is equal to minus lambda n. Now we should apply the variable separable method to find out the number of nucleides disintegrating. So the solution will be like this. So dn by dt is equal to minus lambda n. Applying variable separable method. Then the equation will be like this. dn by n is equal to minus lambda dt. Now I am integrating the whole equation with respect to LHS and RHS within the limits. So dn by n, initially the nucleides present is, let us say, n naught, and it was reached to n. Initial time is t naught and the time taken for the complete disintegration is t. So within the limits I am integrating, on integrating both sides. So what it will be? dn by n integral n naught to n is equal to minus lambda dt integral 0 to t, or we can write t naught. At time t naught, number of nucleides present is n naught. After reaching the time t, number of nucleides remained is n. So what is the integration? Integral dx by x is log x. In place of this one we can write log n. Log n within the limits n naught to n. is equal to minus lambda t within the limits t naught to t. So this one log n minus log n naught is equal to minus lambda t minus t naught. If t naught is approaching to 0, let us write like this. 0, then the expression is log n minus log n naught is equal to minus lambda t. Log n minus log n naught is equal to minus lambda t. Log a minus log b, log a by b. Therefore, log n by n naught is equal to minus lambda t. We can write n by n naught is equal to e power minus lambda t. Therefore, n is equal to n naught into e power minus lambda t. As a function of time, we can write the equation like this. N of t is equal to n naught into e power minus lambda t. Number of nuclides remained is equal to number of nuclides present in the initial state into exponential of minus lambda t, where lambda is equal to wavelength, which is respective to the time. So now we are going to find out the total decay constant. So what is the decay constant? At which rate the decay is taking place? That is said to be decay constant. The expression is R is equal to minus dN by dt. Decay constant symbol is R. It is expressed by minus dN by dt. Means number of nuclides decayed per unit time. We know that dN by dt is equal to minus lambda t. So R is equal to minus of minus lambda. So it will be lambda n is equal to R. Therefore, R is equal to lambda into what is n? N naught into e power minus lambda t. So we can write R is equal to R naught into e power minus lambda t. If we compare the equations, we can write R naught is equal to lambda n naught. If it is t is equal to 0, we can write R is equal to lambda n. This is called activity, or is called decay constant, and the total activity did by the nuclides. There is a SI unit to find out the activity of the nuclide, that is said to be becquerel. SI unit of activity is 1 becquerel. One becquerel is nothing but 1 disintegration per second, or 1 disintegration per unit time. And there is an expression for the Curie to becquerel transformation also. It will be like this, cursor. So we can write 1 Curie is equal to 3.7 into 10 to the power of 10 decays per second. So we can write 1 decay per second is 1 becquerel. That's why we can write 1 Curie is equal to 3.7 into 10 to the power of 10 becquerel. Now we will see one graph which relates to the time to the number of nuclides decayed, and the graph explains about the half-life phenomenon of the radioactive samples. Here is the graph which relates to the time to the number of nuclides which are undecayed. Undecayed means they are not at all decayed. Initially they are N0. At a time t half, the N0 becomes N0 by 2. That means exactly half of the initial position, initial state. Next half time it becomes N0 by 4, means half of this one. Next half, it is becoming n naught by 2. It is nothing but half of n naught by 4. Continuously goes. Means whenever a radioactive sample with respect to the time it is decaying, it continuously decays. Decays until it approaches the small nuclides. It is very difficult to get the 0th state of the decaying of the nuclides, but we can say that it decays like this integrals. 1 by 2, 1 by 4, 1 by 8, 1 by 16 or 1 by 32 of the initial. So from this graph we can find one definition for the radioactive samples. What is the definition? Here, see this one. The time taken to reduce the initial sample to exactly its half is called half-life. Means there will be a time for every nuclide. In that given time, that nuclide becomes half of its initial state. Don't say the half of the beginning. Because here if you see the T half to 2 T half, it is n naught by 4. Means n naught by 4 is nothing but the half of the n naught by 2. Nothing but T half we are taking as initial whenever the second decade is possible. So the time taken for the reduction or decaying of a given initial sample to half of its original is called half-life. How will you get the half-life? We have the equation n is equal to n naught into e power minus lambda t. What is half-life? N is equal to n naught by 2 and t is equal to t half. If you substitute these two values, the equation will get like this. N naught by 2 is equal to n naught into e power minus lambda t half. N naught and n naught get cancelled. 1 by 2 is equal to e power minus lambda t half. Now I am applying log on both sides, or first we will see the reciprocals of this one, then apply the log. See the equation, half is equal to e power minus lambda t half. So taking reciprocals on each other. One by 2 is 2 and 1 by e power minus lambda t power half is e power lambda t half. Apply log on both sides. So applying log on both sides, log 2 is equal to log of exponential. Reciprocals to each other, they will cut out. Lambda t half, therefore log 2 by lambda is equal to t half. This refers t half is equal to log 2's value is 0.693 by wavelength. So this is the expression for the half-life of a given nuclide, 0.693 by lambda. What is this lambda? Whenever a nuclide is decaying itself, it is losing the energy. The loss of energy releases in a form of wavelength, nothing but the color. So we can understand this concept in the presence of energy levels diagram in atoms lesson. So it is 0.693 by lambda. That means half-life is inversely proportional to lambda. Lambda is more, half-life is less. Lambda is less, half-life is more. So this is the relationship between half-life to lambda. It is a constant. Next we will see the average life or mean life. So what is the meaning of average life or mean life? Average life or mean life means, suppose if a given nuclide decays, this is decaying. This decaying won't stop. Decay won't stop because it is a continuous process. There is no such a value of 0 when you half a given substance. So decaying is a continuous process. Its mass is going to decrease. So until and unless it should reach 0, we should calculate this total life. So what is the meaning of average life or mean life of a substance? As the decaying is taking place, the total lifespan of the given element is called half-life or average life or mean life. Half-life is exactly half of the original substance, so it is a average life or mean life. So its symbol is tau. The tau is lambda n naught into integral t into e power minus lambda t dt by n naught, where integration 0 to infinity. So what we can understand is, as the decaying is taking place, time is becoming t plus delta t, and 0 is becoming to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up to infinity. So where lambda n, where what is n into n naught into e power minus lambda t dt. That's why, so we multiplied with the time, because time is increased by number of samples in the increase. So n naught and n naught get cancelled. Therefore, we will get tau is equal to 1 by lambda. We know that t half is equal to ln 2 by lambda. So 1 by lambda is equal to tau. Into 1 by lambda is equal to t half. So ln or log 2 into tau is equal to t half. So what we can cite, t half by tau is equal to log 2. This is the expression we can find out. Now we will see one problem which relates to the half-life and decays. Therefore, see the sample of uranium. The problem gives like this: the half-life of a 92 uranium-238 undergoing alpha decay is 4.5 into 10 to the power of 9 years. What is the activity of a 1 gram sample of 92 uranium-238? First of all, you should write what is the quantities given in the problem. 92 uranium-238 is going alpha decay, and its half-life is 4.5 into 10 to the power of 9 years. That means like this. If this is the case, it is in years. We should convert into seconds. So for 1 year, how many seconds we should multiply with that? So the answer is like this: 4.5 into 10 to the power of 9 years. For 1 year, these many seconds, 3.16 into 10 to the power of 7 seconds per year. This is already in years. Years and years get cancelled. So 4.5 into 10 to the power of 9 into 3.16 into 10 to the power of 7 seconds. It is approximately 1.42 into 10 to the power of 17 seconds. Therefore, half-life of the given uranium sample in seconds was found out. Next, what is the question? What is the activity of 1 gram sample of uranium? Activity means R, it is equal to lambda n. But we should find out n. In 1 kg of kilomoles, 1 kg atoms of the moles, it contains, for 1 kg atoms, n is equal to 6.022 into 10 to the power of 23. Nothing but Avogadro number. But here the sample is not in 1 kg, it is 1 grams. So that's why number of particles in 1 grams is equal to 1 by 238 into 10 to the power of minus 3 into 6.022 into 10 to the power of 23 atoms per mole, and this is in kilomole. This mole and mole get cancelled, and the answer we will get is 25.3 into 10 to the power of 20 atoms. Activity R is equal to lambda n, but lambda is equal to log 2 by t half into n. So what is log 2? Therefore R is equal to 0.693 by half-life in seconds, 1.42 into 10 to the power of 17 seconds. N is equal to 25.3 into 10 to the power of 20. So the answer we will get, the activity constant is 1.23 into 10 to the power of 4 becquerels. BQ is the symbol of becquerel. So if a problem is given like this, we should do the conversions like this with corresponding to the Avogadro number. Then the answer will be like this. Now we will see alpha decay. What is alpha decay? Releasing of a helium nucleus. Suppose uranium 92 238. After the alpha decay, it becomes, what is alpha particle? Four. 2 is atomic number, 4 is atomic mass number. So if a alpha particle is removed from a nuclide, its atomic number is going to change by 2, mass number is going to change by 4. Means 92 uranium 234. What is 92 minus 2? 90. It is thorium. 238 minus 4? 234. So what we can say? Plus 2 He4. From uranium, one helium nucleus is removed. It is giving another radioactive element like thorium. So it becomes thorium series. Again from thorium, if you removed any helium, it becomes 88, radium, 234 minus 4, 230. So like that, a helium nucleus is removed from a given radioactive element, and another series of the radioactive elements going to start. So what we can understand with this experiment is the chemical formula, the chemical analysis of the alpha decay is like this. Elements symbol is X, atomic number is Z, mass number is A, refers to Z minus 2, Y, A minus 4 plus 2 He4. This is element X, this is element Y, this is element He. This is the formula for the alpha decay, removal of the helium nucleus. So what are the physical significances from this? Means automatically mass is going to change. So there is a mass defect. So what is Einstein's rule? Binding energy is equal to mass defect into c square. Such like that. What is the binding energy or energy of the disintegration? Mass of X minus mass of Y minus mass of He into c square. This is the disintegration energy or binding energy in case of alpha decay. So this is about the alpha decay transitions.